My question is for Annika Smethurst. Do you believe that you are above the law? And do you believe, if you have committed a breach of that law, that you are unable to be investigated for that breach simply because you are a journalist?
And I should know you're former cop.
Thank you.
So you have a view of this sort of thing. I will come to you, Annika, but I'd like your view on this first, Jacinta Carroll. A journalist above the law?
Yeah, thanks, Hamish, and thanks for the question, John. I think one of the things that has come out through the public reaction and the media reaction to the search warrants or the raids, as they're usually described last year, is that there seems to be a lack of understanding, I would observe with the media, and this comes from my reading all of the submissions that have gone to the current parliamentary inquiry, but also amongst the Australian public about why things are classified and what the role of whistleblowers is and where the media comes into that. And it really begs the question in the case of the person who provided, the Commonwealth official who provided this information to Annika or persons, are there enough mechanisms for them to safely raise concerns where those matters are official secrets? And I'd have to say that the answer is yes. However, it's not clear that that is well understood broadly in Australia. And that probably leads to another issue of how well educated are the Australian public on where security sits and whether it is accountable in our society. And also on
So do you think that Annika deserved to have her home raided in that circumstance?
I don't know the details of the case or the details of the particular details of the information.
But there's a principle.
Well, there's a principle that since we've had a Crimes Act, which is more than 100 years, it has been a crime to release official information, and for decades it's been a crime to publish that information. So that's fairly clear, and they're very old standard laws, and they're laws that exist in every liberal democracy. The issue for us then is, of course, the courts have upheld that the search warrant in Annika's case wasn't well written, wasn't appropriate, so that's pushed to one side. But still, there would be investigations that are ongoing, and it does appear from what's in the public arena that a Commonwealth official who was very well placed, had a security clearance, had stated, I would say on my experience on a number of occasions through their career, that they understood that they couldn't use Commonwealth information and Commonwealth goods, public goods. This is information the same as anyone who works at Centrelink or in the police or others.
You're talking about the source here, the alleged source. This is a question about the journalist and whether they deserve to be pursued.
If you're holding that information, classified information, you don't have the authority to, then that's something that can be investigated. And publishing that information, which appears to have been done, is something that can be investigated and potentially prosecuted.
Do I think I'm above the law, John? Well, the police came to my house with a warrant that was illegal and trespassed. So do they think they're above the law would be the first thing there. I understand the reason for secrecy in certain things. I'm not this sort of person that just thinks publish, we're entitled to know everything that happens out there. But back to the law is 100 years old, and it does say that you can't give information. This relates to anything. It could be the amount of paper clips kept at ASIO. If that information is sent to me, that then puts me at fault. It's actually, as soon as it lands in my inbox or anywhere.
Dennis Richardson's shaking his head and saying rubbish.
One more point I want to make about the being above the law. There are a lot of professions that actually have carve-outs, whether that's doctors and patient confidentiality. Let's not forget politicians have a privilege that makes them above the law. It's not about being above the law. It's that the laws don't work to allow journalists to do the job that they want to do.
Dennis Richardson, why are you shaking your head and saying rubbish?
Well, I would simply say it trivialises it enormously to talk about the number of paper clips in ASIO being classified. Secondly, members of Parliament are not above the law. The same laws which allowed a journalist's home to be visited by the police are the same laws that would allow them to visit the home of a Member of Parliament.
It wasn't
which
a
they
visit,
can
it was
claim,
a raid.
Yeah, and they can claim privilege over that.
Can I address that question, please? Nobody voted for Annika Smethurst, nobody voted for the media. People voted for the government to keep the country secure. And so the government really has to bear the consequences of any leaks that occur or any information that gets released. And so the media doesn't get to decide what level of classification any piece of information has or ought to have, unclassified, secret, top secret. But also, under our system, the government doesn't get to decide, not exclusively anyway, what information we, the public, need to hold it accountable. It doesn't get to make that call, okay? So there's this dynamic tension, a metabolic interaction, if you like, between self-government and self-defense, between self-rule, the information we need. So Sections 7 and 24 of our Constitution require all of us to directly elect our representatives in the House and the Senate. And we need certain information in order to hold governments accountable. The government doesn't get to limit what kind of information we need to hold it accountable. Now, there are some times when the media has to exercise independent judgment. If, for example, during the war on terror, when Jemaah Islamiyah, the terrorist group, is attacking the Australian embassy in Jakarta, and ASIS efforts are instead being diverted away to spy on Timor for Corp.
They weren't diverted.
In 2004, ASIS's budget was 3.9 million. Now it's about 500 million. To go into a foreign country and bug their government is a diversion of resources. Even if there is infinite resources, it takes a certain amount of resources. On the 9th of September 2004, the Australian embassy in Jakarta got hit by a car bomb. And that's exactly the time at which the ASIS team, in September and October 2004, was spying on the Timorese government. That's a diversion.